My phone rang just as I was rinsing my coffee mug at the sink. I almost didn't answer. The name on the screen made my chest tighten in a familiar way I hadn't felt since childhood. Linda. My older sister. I took a slow breath, dried my hands on a towel and answered. Hello. She didn't bother with pleasantries. Where have you been? She snapped. Mom's lawyer has been calling you. You can't just disappear when there's paperwork to sign. Her tone was sharp, impatient, already annoyed that I existed on her timeline. I haven't disappeared, I said evenly. I just wasn't aware I owed anyone immediate access to me. She gave a short laugh. The kind that always meant she thought she was winning. Claire, don't make this harder than it needs to be. We're settling Mom's estate. The house. The land. The accounts. And before you start getting confused, I want to be very clear about something. I leaned against the counter, staring out the kitchen window at my quiet backyard. Clear about what? That Mom trusted me with the important things, Linda said. She always did. You were never the practical one. There was the story she'd been telling our entire lives. I was 43 years old and somehow, I was still the irresponsible younger sister in her mind. You always struggled, she continued. Emotionally, financially. You moved around too much. You never settled into anything solid. So don't go assuming this is some kind of windfall for you. I felt something stir inside me. Not anger. Not yet. Just a deep, familiar ache. I'm not assuming anything, I said. I haven't even seen the will. Well, I have, she replied smugly. And let's just say Mom made her wishes very clear. There was a pause. She wanted me to ask. I didn't. Instead I said, then I suppose the lawyer will explain everything when the time comes. Her voice hardened. You always did this, she said. Acted like you were above it all. But the truth is, Claire, Mom knew who could handle responsibility and who couldn't. And it wasn't you. The words landed softly but cut deep, because they echoed decades of being compared, dismissed, and quietly judged. I have to go, I said. What? She scoffed. This affects you whether you like it or not. I'm sure it does, I replied. Goodbye, Linda. I hung up before she could say anything else. For a long moment I just stood there, phone still in my hand, heart beating faster than it should have. 43. That was how old I was now. Old enough to have built a life without approval. Old enough to know my worth didn't come from my sister's version of me. And yet, her words still had power. Because this wasn't just about money. It was about a lifetime of being told I was less. Growing up, Linda was the one everyone admired. The organized one. The confident one. The one who stayed close to home, married well, hosted holidays, and knew how to speak loudly enough to be heard. I was the quiet one. The one who moved away for work. The one who sent checks instead of showing up. The one who helped quietly and never announced it. In our family, visibility mattered more than substance. And Linda had always understood that. As I sat down at the small kitchen table, my thoughts drifted to my mother. Her voice. Her habits. The way she'd squeeze my hand just a little longer when Linda wasn't looking. There were things my sister didn't see. Things she never noticed. And for the first time since that phone call, a strange sense of calm settled over me. Because while Linda was busy declaring victory, she had overlooked one important detail. My mother had never been as blind as everyone thought. And the truth, the real truth, had a way of surfacing when people were most certain they already knew it. Growing up, Linda was always the example. If I brought home a report card with all A's, my mother would smile politely and say, "That's nice, Claire. Linda won an academic award today." If I helped cook dinner, it was expected. If Linda set the table once, it was praised. She was 3 years older, louder, quicker to speak. She knew how to take up space in a room, how to make people listen. I learned early that if I waited my turn, there might not be a turn left. At family gatherings, relatives would ask her about her plans, her job, her future. When they turned to me, it was usually with a gentle tilt of the head. "And how are you doing, dear?" As if I were perpetually in transition. As if I were always on the verge of becoming something. Someday. By the time I left for college, the roles were firmly set. Linda stayed close to home, married her college boyfriend, and settled into a life that looked good from the outside. She hosted holidays. She managed birthdays. She made sure everyone saw how much she did. I took a different path. I moved. I worked. I struggled. I rebuilt. I learned how to stand on my own without applause. When our parents needed help years later, I was the one who stepped in quietly. I paid bills when money ran short. I covered medical expenses when insurance didn't. I sent monthly transfers without reminders or conditions. Linda talked about responsibility. I practiced it. But that wasn't the version of the story people heard. Whenever my parents thanked their daughters for the support, Linda would smile and squeeze Mom's arm as if to say, of course. What else would family do? No one ever asked who actually wrote the checks. I didn't correct them. Part of me thought it didn't matter. That doing the right thing was enough. Another part of me still hoped, foolishly, that one day my efforts would be seen without me having to explain myself. Years passed like that. Quiet sacrifices. Loud assumptions. When Mom's health began to decline, Linda took charge of appointments and phone calls. She liked being visible. I handled the finances. I always had. Sometimes Mom would call me late at night, her voice tired. You shouldn't have to carry this alone, she'd say softly. It's okay, I'd reply. I can manage. And I could. What I didn't realize was that she was watching everything. Not just what we did but how we did it. Linda believed love was measured by presence and performance. I believed it was measured by consistency. Two very different things. When Mom passed, Linda took control immediately. She organized the funeral, chose the flowers, greeted guests with red eyes and steady posture. People praised her strength. I stood quietly at the back, accepting condolences from those who barely knew me. More than one person leaned in and whispered, "It must be hard losing your mother when you were never very close." I nodded because correcting them felt pointless. At the time I thought the hardest part was the loss. I was wrong. The hardest part was realizing how completely my sister had rewritten our story, and how easily everyone believed her version. So when Linda called about the inheritance, so certain of her place, so confident in her narrative, she wasn't being cruel. She was being consistent. She truly believed I had never carried weight. She truly believed I had always been the weaker one. And she had no idea that my mother had seen everything she hadn't. There are sacrifices no one applauds. They don't come with thank you speeches or public acknowledgement. They happen in silence, usually late at night when you're staring at numbers on a screen and deciding what can wait and what can't. For me, those sacrifices began in my 30s. Our parents had retired earlier than planned. At first, it sounded reasonable. Dad was tired. Mom's health was unpredictable. Linda assured everyone they had it under control. They didn't. Bills started arriving that they hadn't anticipated. Insurance gaps. Property taxes. Small emergencies that added up quickly. One evening Mom called me, her voice hesitant. "We don't want to worry Linda," she said. "She has enough on her plate." So I helped. At first it was occasional. Then it became regular. I covered shortfalls. Paid off balances. Set up automatic transfers so they wouldn't have to ask. I never announced it. I never reminded anyone. I just handled it. Linda knew money was being taken care of, but she never asked how. She assumed it was part of being responsible, the role she believed belonged to her. When relatives commented on how well our parents were managing in retirement, Linda would smile knowingly. "I make sure they're okay," she'd say. I would be standing nearby holding my tongue. It wasn't that I needed credit. I needed peace. And peace, I had learned, often came from staying quiet. There were moments, though, when the imbalance stung. Like the time Linda lectured me at Thanksgiving about financial planning, completely unaware that the mortgage she praised my parents for paying on time was paid in part by me. Or when she told a cousin I was still figuring things out, while I was the one adjusting my own budget to make sure Mom's medication was covered. I made choices no one saw. Delayed vacations. Older cars. Saying no to things I wanted because someone else needed something more. And still I was the unreliable one. The narrative never changed. Mom noticed, though. Sometimes she would mention things that caught me off guard. "You're always so steady," she once said quietly. "You don't need anyone watching to do the right thing." I shrugged it off, unsure how to respond. I didn't know she was keeping records. Every transfer. Every payment. Every receipt. I didn't know she was writing things down either. Letters. Notes. Thoughts she never said out loud. While Linda was busy managing appearances, my mother was paying attention to substance. When Mom passed, Linda stepped into her familiar role: organizer, spokesperson, decision-maker. She told everyone she would handle the legal details. And I let her. because at the time I still believed that doing the right thing would eventually speak for itself. What I didn't realize was that the truth doesn't always speak loudly. Sometimes it waits patiently, for the exact moment it needs to be heard. The lawyer's office was smaller than I imagined. Beige walls. A framed photograph of a lake at sunset. A box of tissues placed carefully in the center of the table, as if grief could be scheduled and contained. Linda arrived first. She sat upright, purse on her lap, legs crossed, already in control. She nodded at me when I entered, polite but distant, like someone acknowledging an acquaintance rather than a sister. "You're late," she said quietly. "I'm on time," I replied, taking the chair across from her. The lawyer entered a moment later, a thin man with gray hair and kind eyes. He expressed his condolences, spoke gently about my mother, and then opened a folder thick with documents. Linda leaned forward, ready. I noticed her fingers tapping lightly against her purse. "Your mother was very specific," the lawyer began. "She revised her will twice in the last 3 years." Linda smiled faintly as if that confirmed something she already knew. He started with the basics. Personal belongings. Jury. Household items. Linda was named executor. That didn't surprise me. "She always trusted me to handle things," Linda said, glancing at me. I said nothing. Then the lawyer paused. "There is an additional provision," he said, adjusting his glasses. "One your mother asked me to read verbatim." The room felt suddenly smaller. He cleared his throat. "To my daughters," he read, "I leave not only what I owned but what I observed." Linda's smile faltered. He continued. "My estate is to be divided based not on who spoke the loudest, but on who carried the weight when no one was watching." Linda shifted in her seat. The lawyer looked directly at her. "The house and surrounding land are to be placed in a trust," he said. "Distribution is contingent upon a review of documented financial contributions made to my care and household over the past 10 years. Linda let out a short, incredulous laugh. "That's not necessary," she said. "I took care of everything." The lawyer didn't react. "Your mother anticipated that response," he said calmly. "Which is why she included records." He opened another folder. Bank statements. Copies of checks. Detailed notes in my mother's handwriting. I felt my throat tighten. "These documents show that Claire provided the majority of financial support," the lawyer continued. "Consistently. Quietly. Without conditions." Linda's face drained of color. "That can't be right," she said sharply. "She was always struggling. She barely stayed in one place." I finally spoke. "Stability doesn't always look the way you expect," I said softly. The lawyer went on. "Based on these records, your mother directed that the house be transferred to Claire." Silence filled the room. Linda stared at the table as if it had betrayed her. "That's impossible," she whispered. "Mom would have told me." The lawyer closed the folder. "Your mother trusted that the truth would speak when it needed to," he said. "She asked me to tell you both that this decision was made with clarity and peace." I sat there, stunned. Not because of the house, but because for the first time in my life, my mother's voice had been louder than my sister's. And Linda finally had nothing to say. Linda didn't speak on the drive back from the lawyer's office. She walked ahead of me in the parking lot, her heels striking the pavement too sharply, as if each step were an argument she was still rehearsing. I expected anger. What I didn't expect was fear. It showed in the way her hands trembled when she unlocked her car, in the way she avoided looking at me, as if eye contact might make the truth harder to deny. Over the next few days the phone calls started. Not to me. To everyone else. Aunt Margaret called first. "I didn't know you were helping your parents all those years," she said gently. "Linda always said she was handling everything." Then a cousin. Then an old family friend. Each conversation followed the same pattern. Surprise, then shame, then quiet support. Linda tried to regain control. She told people Mom must have been confused. That the records were exaggerated. That I had manipulated the situation somehow. But facts have a way of standing firm when stories collapse. The lawyer released copies of the documents to the family, exactly as Mom had instructed. No commentary. No accusations. Just truth. Handwritten notes in Mom's careful script. "Claire paid the insurance again this month. Claire didn't want recognition. She only asked that I be comfortable. Linda means well, but she doesn't see everything. Reading those words felt like reopening a wound and healing it at the same time. Linda called me late one evening. Her voice was tight, brittle. "You could have told me," she said. "You let me look like a fool." I was quiet for a moment before answering. "I spent years telling myself it didn't matter," I said. "That doing the right thing was enough." "Well, it mattered now," she snapped. "Everyone's acting like I'm some kind of villain." "I never said that," I replied. "But you let them think it," she insisted. "No," I said calmly. "I let them see." She went silent. For the first time, Linda wasn't competing with me. She was confronting a version of herself she didn't recognize. Relatives stopped calling her for explanations. They started calling me, to check in, to apologize, to ask questions they should have asked years ago. I didn't gloat. I didn't correct every misunderstanding. I simply told the truth when asked. And that was enough. What surprised me most wasn't Linda's reaction. It was my own. I didn't feel victorious. I felt lighter. As if a weight I'd carried so long I'd forgotten it was there had finally been set down. For years I had been defined by someone else's voice. Now that voice had lost its power. And there was only one chapter left. Not about what I gained, but about what I chose to do with it. The house didn't feel like a prize. It felt like a responsibility. As I stood in the empty living room a few weeks later, sunlight streaming through the same windows I remembered from childhood, I realized something important. I hadn't wanted the inheritance. I had wanted the truth. Linda stopped calling. When she did reach out, her tone was different. Careful, restrained, unsure of where she stood now that certainty had abandoned her. We spoke once more briefly. "I didn't know Mom saw things that way," she said quietly. "I know," I replied. That was all. I didn't ask for apologies. I didn't offer explanations. I had spent too many years justifying my existence. Instead, I made decisions that felt right to me. I sold the house. Not out of spite. Not out of bitterness. But because it belonged to a chapter that had already closed. With the proceeds, I secured my future. Paid off debts. Set aside savings. Built something stable. Something no one could question or take away. Linda kept her share of the estate. The items Mom had left her. The role she had always played. I didn't try to change her. I changed myself. At 43, I finally understood something that had taken me a lifetime to learn. Being quiet does not mean being weak. Being unseen does not mean being insignificant. And worth does not need witnesses to exist. My mother had seen me. That was enough. Some people inherit property. Some inherit validation. I inherited peace. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I was standing in anyone's shadow anymore.